Okay, so I'm going to call to order the meeting, the Romeo Planning Commission for July the 9th, 2020. And we're going to start with roll call. By the way, two things before we get started. Jay Foltz is our recording secretary tonight. I want to remind everybody, if you have comments, say your names, since some people only have audio. Please address your comments and questions to the chair, and all votes are going to be roll call votes. So let's begin with roll call.
Unmute yourself.
I do.
Okay, Stagner,
Here.
Grandstaff,
Here.
Fowler,
Yes.
Hall,
Here.
Stevens,
Here.
Webb, Smiles,
Here.
Davis,
Present.
and I'm here.
Okay, let's move on to approval of our agenda. Sorry. Anybody want to make a motion to approve or make changes?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda. Grandstaff.
Paul will second.
Okay, roll call. Jay?
Davis,
Present.
Stagner,
Yes.
Webb, oh, Webb's not here. Stevens,
Yes.
I think
Hall.
Carl's trying to get on.
Yes.
Smiles,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Grandstaff,
Yes.
and Foltz is a yes.
Okay, it passes. All right, move on to approval of the meeting minutes for June 4th, 2020. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second, Stevens.
Okay. Jay, you want to lead?
Davis, yep,
Yes.
roll call is Davis,
Yes.
Smiles,
Yes.
Grandstaff,
Yes.
Fowler, Bueller, Stagner,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Hall,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Mute
and
it.
did Webb come in there yet?
He is not. I phoned him and told him that if he's having problems, he can come to the village offices. But I
Okay.
just got his voicemail, so if he joins us, I'll let you know.
Okay, and who seconded, who supported that?
I seconded.
Oh, that was Smiles?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to the public forum section of our meeting. Are there any questions there, Christine Malzahn?
I see no questions in the group chat.
All right, let's move on to new business. We'll start with Pam Palona Companies, Bailey Street, site plan review. Okay, why is this happening now? All right. So any comments about the Bailey Street project? Any questions? We have our guests here to answer questions. Before we do that, Mr. Casson, would you like to say anything about this, and then we'll ask Mr. Clark.
Sure. On the screen, you should have my review, and it's basically a site plan that we're requesting approval tonight, or the petitioners requesting approval to construct a medical building, a one-story medical building on the property there on Bailey Street, as you can see the map. What's unique about this site is they're only providing, I believe, 8 parking spaces on the property, and they need additional parking somewhere within the DDA. On your ordinance books, there is a provision that states that the developer can pay into a fund on a yearly basis to provide money to cover the cost of maintenance throughout the public lots. Mr. Vito Papaloma has indicated that in lieu of that, and we don't, and again, this hasn't been done before, and a fee charge. So we're not exactly what fee to charge, but it's on the books, on your ordinances. But he has suggested that he will maintain the parking lot, add additional landscaping to the site, and do some other improvements to the lighting in that for his share of the use of the parking lot in lieu of that yearly payment. So that's one thing that needs to be considered. The second thing needs to be considered is there for the alley adjacent to the site be vacated, at least half of that alley be vacated. So that's another issue. Now, the site plan itself meets the ordinance requirements with the exception of the parking that we need to deal with. But everything else meets the ordinance. And so it's basically tonight it's up to the planning commission to approve the ordinance, or approve the site plan or not, and then to make a recommendation to the village council regarding the direction of the vacating of the easement or the alley and the how you would think they should handle the payment in lieu of parking. So.
Any comments from anyone?
I've got a couple that I'd like to at least express. I normally always...
The grand staff, right?
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. Normally I agree with Steve on most of his recommendations to us, but this one I have some real problems with it. I honestly think the building is too large for the existing property. Again, does not have adequate parking, so he wants to use the village parking lot. My concern, number one, is how many people are going to be working in that building? How many vehicles are they going to have? How many patients are going to be in that parking lot? There's only 28 parking spots and 2 handicap spots in the village parking lot there. And if you've got 4 different offices or whatever they are, and you've got 3 or 4 people in each one, and then you start adding patients into that, I'm definitely not for that. Number 2, I do not like vacating the access that we have, and I am definitely opposed to this whole structure on that piece of property with all the little things to make things better for them. And I definitely have had problems with this. Sorry, Steve, I just can't agree with you on this one.
Well, no, I'm not making a determination. I'm leaving that up to you guys. I just say it meets the ordinance in terms of the building and setback. So I don't take these personally.
Mm.
Is Mr. Clark, Zach Fowler, can I ask a question?
I'm here.
Mark Clark. As far as the vacating the alley, didn't we do something years ago with the Allward property on that development over there? As far as instead of vacating it, we did a lease or something?
I don't recall specifically what was done with that particular piece of property. That could be, my recollection is that alley was vacated. It could have been something different, but I believe the alley was vacated to allow the development that took place there. And there is a specific procedure for the vacation of an alley or a street. It's in the General Law Village Act. It can only be done if the village council passes a resolution indicating its intent to vacate, in this case, I believe an alley. After that resolution, if there is one, is passed by the village council, there then has to be not sooner than 4 weeks from that resolution. So at least a month after that, a public hearing on whether or not that's a good idea. And people can express their objections, and if there are any. And if somebody objects, then it can't be done. The vacation can't be done except upon a further resolution or an ordinance by the village council. So the planning commission can, the planning commission, I suppose, could approve the site plan subject to certain contingencies, certain things happening. I know there are times when that's appropriate. Maybe this is one of those times. I'm not sure. But generally speaking, I don't recommend that you approve things subject to things happening subsequently that would, in essence, set aside the approval. So by way of example, if you were inclined to approve the site plan subject to the vacation of the alley, the village council does not pass a resolution intending to vacate the alley, then the site plan becomes unapproved. Or if the village council adopted a resolution expressing an intent to vacate the alley, holds a public hearing a month out, receives objections and decides, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. And so there is not a resolution or an ordinance to vacate the alley, then again, the site plan becomes unapproved. I'm just not terribly keen about that procedure. I know it's done perhaps more often than I recognize, and there's certainly are instances where it's appropriate of things that are perhaps more of a ministerial nature. I know sometimes site plans are approved subject to the zoning board of appeals granting a variance or other things happening. So I realize that it's not an uncommon procedure. It's just not often the best. Mr. Casson may have some thoughts about that from a planning perspective. And just so this doesn't get away, it's not entirely off topic, but it's sliding in a little bit different, into a little bit different area. The village ordinances, your zoning ordinance, has a formula for the determining of parking spaces and the number required. To Mr. Grandstaff's point about how many people are going to be parking there, and employees, patients, whatever the case might be, there's a formula in your zoning ordinance that's related to the number of employees and also based on the number of square feet of the facility. So the number of required parking spaces should be susceptible to determination, and then whether and if you're going to use an off-site parking lot to accommodate the parking requirements, it has to be within 300 feet under your ordinance. And so you have to look at those things to see if they apply, and if so, does the site plan address those aspects?
Thank you. Can I ask one last question, Mr. Clerk?
I'm at your disposal.
Oh, all right. Mr. Grandstaff just mentioned about the oversize of the building for the lot. Would it be possible to go up? You know, instead of it laying out ranch-wise, to go up with it a story or two. That way it would accommodate the parking on the lot.
As long as the height requirement is within that which is permissible under the village ordinances, the answer is yes. if the height that it may require exceeds the limitation in the village ordinances, then there would have to be a request for a variance. But the answer is that possible? Yes. Is that good planning? Is it a good idea? Is it a workable idea within the ordinance? I don't know. But is that something that could be considered and possibly implemented? The answer is yes, that's possible.
Okay, thanks. Because what Mr. Grandstaff said, you know, we have to take under consideration. But I think if we approach this as trying to make it happen to this lot and work with them, we can probably design something that would fit and not take up the people's tax-paying dollars for the lot, or just not as many parking spots.
Well, your parking spots under the formula in your ordinance, your zoning ordinance, is going to be determined by the number of employees and the square feet. And so if you go up instead of out, in a manner of speaking, I'm assuming the square footage would be approximately the same. It may not. It may not answer the parking question unless going up allowed for more on-site parking.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm looking at.
On the lots or lots
Correct.
itself, then that may be a way to balance what appear to be competing concerns.
Okay, thank you. That was my concern.
Mr. Clark, Jim Stegner. My question is, I think you're suggesting that unless the trustees vacate that alley first, we shouldn't move forward with the site plan approval. Is that correct?
Well, I'm suggesting that you think about it because, again, and I would appreciate Mr. Cassin's view on it from the planning perspective. I'm just not, I don't want to devolve into sports terms, but I'm just not a big fan of having site plans approved with contingencies, unless the contingency is the outcome of the contingency is more readily known. And so can you do it? Yes, I think it's legally appropriate to approve a site plan subject to, if it requires the vacation of the alley, subject to the village council vacating the alley, subject to whatever else it might be. You can do that. You have the legal ability to do that. You have to decide from a planner or planning perspective whether you think that's a good idea. Maybe it is. Maybe it nudges things along, and maybe it puts things in a direction where you get the outcome that you want, but it could also just delay the inevitable. And if the inevitable is the alley's not going to be vacated, then it's men wrestling on the deck of the Titanic. It's not going to matter.
Thank you.
Thank you for the historic analogy there.
Sometimes I can't help myself.
I appreciate it.
I have one
Mr.
last.
Snyder, if I could, I'm sorry, Mr. Fowler,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to let you know that you have a guest, Mr. Parker, that has raised his hand to address the board.
Okay.
You also have Mr. Pampalona, who is unmuted. If anybody wanted to ask the builder or the developer any particular questions, he is also attending.
Yes, I see him.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Parker's question is, go ahead.
Let me unmute him. Okay, Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Hey there. I'm Bill Parker. I don't know if you can see me or not. I'm a resident. I'm also a property owner in the block adjacent to that. I'm a member of the DDA. Unfortunately, with the way paperwork flows in the village of Romeo, this project has not come before the DDA. Of course, there's no particular reason that you would be required to. But the DDA is the only governmental agency in town whose sole purpose is to study the downtown area, the central business district, our district, and work towards its future and its plans. On a personal basis, I agreed with everything that Mr. Grandstaff said, but that's certainly not as a DDA member. I would urge you to seriously consider tabling this until the DDA has a chance to talk about it, which would be our next meeting on the 13th, and provide you our input as to how the DDA feels about it. You can mute me.
Oh, no, I can't do that. All right, thank you. Any other commentary from the commission?
I have one, Zach Fowler. On number 6, item 1, number 6, whereas no, they will not be responsible for any patching, repairing, and or sealing of the asphalt. I mean, if damages are done, now we're asking taxpayers to make repairs to their parking lot that it might not have been taxpayers' faults, but usage by this company if it happens to go in. So I think working with Vito, if they could change that number 6. And on number 7, at least split the cost. So if something happens due to their using the parking lot and some of the curbs are damaged, and we're going to fix it, yes, but at least split the cost with us.
If I could just ask, has any computation been made of the number of required parking spaces?
Yes, well, no.
And how many are required based on the
Mr.
formula?
Clark?
Yes.
I did figure it out. The formula requires them to have, it's 22.86 for technicality, but 23.
Okay.
It looks to me like there's 10 on the site. So they're roughly providing 40% of the required parking. The ordinance also says that 25% of this requirement must be provided on site. So they've met that requirement.
Okay.
At 5.715 parking spaces. They've met
Okay.
that requirement.
The reason I ask, and I appreciate that, thank you very much, that is critical information, because my concern was I have not counted the number of parking spaces in the parking lot that's being considered. But if the number of required parking spaces approximated or exceeded the total number of spaces in the lot, then you've got at least one, maybe two other issues. But if they meet in terms of the site plan that's you're being asked to approve, if they meet the parking requirements on site and they're within the formula, then the concern I had is addressed. So thank you for that.
May I interject? Parking spaces are 10 by 20 or approximately 20 by 9, which means you need 180 square feet for each parking space, not including the maneuvering lanes. And looking at the site plan, if you were to think that they could double put the same size building by going up a second story, that would obviously provide more parking on the site, but it certainly would not allow space to accommodate the entire site. The entire needs. So basically what they would have to do, and that's totally within your project. I don't want to get the idea that they can double the building size height-wise and have enough parking on the site. They still wouldn't be able to make that. They'd have to reduce the square footage, if you follow what I'm saying. This is based on 1 for every 300 square feet. So basically, I'm looking at the plan, it would not fit. So your option would be for them to reduce the square footage, possibly go up, but just by providing the same square footage on 2 stories would not work.
Well, is this being considered as a professional office or as a clinic, a medical dental type clinic? What is the use?
My understanding is going to be a 4-suite medical building with doctors and dentists. Maybe it's time to bring in the Vito to talk to them.
Yes.
Okay, well, the reason I ask is because under the ordinance, it's one space. If it's a professional office, it's one space for each 200 square feet. If it's a medical or dental clinic, then it's one space for each employee plus one space for each 150 square feet.
Right,
So,
which exceeds a little more. You're right. Which is still not going to be able to accommodate it based on the square footage on that property if they go up.
Well, going up was only a suggestion.
No, I
Try to-
agree. I just don't want anybody to think that's a viable solution without a reduction of the square footage.
This is Tom Stevens here. My recollection is that you can go up 3. Was that changed somewhere along the line? You can go 3
No, I believe
stories.
it's right. 3 stories.
Yep, 3 stories you can go up, right?
Yes.
And talking about the vacating of the alley on the Peyton Way, I was involved with that, and I'm not, again, it's been a long time, but Dugan Allward tried to get that alley vacated multiple times and was turned down in every time that he tried. Anthony came in and built the project, and I don't recall that alley being vacated. I do recall a provision that gave him an opportunity to still have it there, but you see that big metal structure that's in the front of that alley, or that vacated alley. He was required to put that in there for whatever reason, and I always wondered, how would you get a fire truck in there? So I'm a little concerned about the vacating of the alley. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But that's just my recollection of the history of that project, that particular project, when Zach brought up that issue. So I just wanted to share that past experience with you.
and I agree with Tom. I do know that Dugan had requested, and this is probably apocryphal, but the reason he moved out of town was because the village wouldn't vacate the alley.
And that's exactly why I moved. And we lost business when that happened.
And it may be, and again, it should be in the village records what happened, because there's supposed to be a record made of the vacating of any alley or street. So there should be something in the village records that indicate that. And absent that, we can thrash about whether it was or it wasn't. And but I do recall what Mr. Stevens said about the denial to Mr. Allward. And it may be the physical configuration of that improvement that's there. There is a separation between the buildings, and maybe that's the alley. I don't know. I'd have to look at the plat map, and you'd have to look at the village records to see whether there was any formal vacation of that alley.
Hey, I make a motion.
If I could just interrupt, Mr. Parker has his hand raised. I know that you've
Oh.
already given him some time, but I can unmute him again if you want me to allow him in, Mr. Stenger.
Yes.
I think I'm back.
Yep.
Yes.
I took the site plan, or a copy of it, to the architect who shares an office with me, and we're next door to the village hall today. And we came up with something in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 cars required under the standards that he works with in developing these site plans. And the number of 150 per, let's call it customer or client or patient, means you'd need something in the neighborhood of 43 parking spots for just the clients, patients, or whatever, plus whatever other people you would need to run those offices. The site is, as Mr. Grandstaff first suggested, desperately overbuilt. You can mute me.
Boy, if I'd known that years ago, Bill.
I was just going to say, that we could, but oh well.
Hey, I have one last question before the motion.
Excuse me.
Zach Fowler, please.
Okay, 1 second, Mr. Fowler. Mr. Pampalona, would you like to say something?
I don't know if I'm unmuted.
I can hear you.
Okay. I'd like to address a couple things in regards to the vacation of the alley. The property that is due north of 220 North Bailey, that portion of the alley is already vacated. So the property that we would be combining 222 North Bailey and 220 North Bailey, 222 North Bailey, that has already been vacated. It's at the county. It's already part of that Sidwell. So directly north, if you look, that's already been vacated. Secondly, when we did a feasibility plan in regards to the rent rates per square foot, you cannot build a 2 or 3 story building there, no matter the parking. You're looking at a cost per square foot to build a ranch versus a 3-story building. It's almost $100 to $200 a square foot more than what we're proposing. It's just not feasible. We would have to, advertise rent rates at like 25 to 26 bucks a foot. You're just not going to get that in downtown Romeo. So in order to build a building that has a good return on it, that's a good investment for myself, the ranch style building medical is what we thought would be suitable for downtown Romeo. There's not a lot of medical space for lease down there. And we thought that we would, by bringing these doctors into the downtown area, that we're also bringing in other people from the surrounding area to their doctors who can also use the downtown district to eat, bringing in foot traffic. In regards to the parking, all the other businesses that are in downtown Romeo, all the bars, the Buscemi's, JL's, Youngers, all of those businesses are all using public parking in their parking count for their buildings, for their occupancy. So what I don't understand is that if we're meeting the ordinance right now the way our site plan is, how come now all of a sudden it doesn't work for us? It works for everybody else, but it doesn't work for us. I mean, we're trying to, provide a service for that parking lot and pay for, the salt, the snow, put new landscaping in, improve that entire area. I agree with Mr. Fowler that we should come to some sort of agreement in case the curbs get damaged or whatnot. That's something that I think that Mark Clark and my council can put together a maintenance agreement that'd be beneficial for both parties. We obviously want to make sure that that parking lot is well taken care of, and that, even if it's not any of my tenants' patients, that if somebody is parking in that parking lot, it has nothing to do with, our businesses, that there's no hazards and things of that nature. But that being said, the way we have the building designed, we already had one meeting with Mr. Casson, went through that. We kind of, looked at this as, what's the best use for downtown Romeo? That's what we thought was best use and best return for us. I am not a big proponent in doing 2, 3, 4-story buildings. They're super expensive to build, and a lot of times they end up being vacant. And I would hate to see that. I also thought that, considering that, we are neighboring residential, a 1-story building is a lot less imposing on the residential neighbors that are due east of us. So if somebody was going to build a house due east of that lot there, if they build a residential house, they're not building a house with a 3-story building towering over their home. So we figured that a low-profile building, it's medical, it can serve the community. We thought that it was a good use. But I mean, the parking issue seems to be what we're stuck on here. I understand that you guys have issues with the parking already. That was addressed at a planning commission meeting I was at some time ago. But I thought that the last meeting that we were just at, I think it was the city council meeting, the vacation of the alley, that was approved. We were under the impression that portion of it was approved, and we just needed to get it vacated. Because really, it serves no purpose sitting there the way it is. The property to the north is already vacated. So to not vacate it, it really serves no purpose, and it doesn't do anything for the village, because then it decreases our square footage size and it decreases the tax dollars that we're going to pay. The less square footage, the less tax money that the village is going to get. So it just doesn't seem like it would be, useful to not vacate it.
It seems to me, Jim Stegner speaking, I don't have much problem with this site plan, except for vacating that piece of property. If Mr. Clark is concerned about it, then it seems to me that that should be resolved first. That's really my only concern with this. I think it's a good use of the area, and the parking lot will be maintained. And there's been a lot of complaint about that parking lot not being used. So I think it'll get used, and we'll be losing some eyesores. That's my view. So any other comments?
If I could just interject, Mr. Stenger, this is President Malzahn. I just wanted to recap. Yes, we addressed this at our last village council meeting. There was no formal board action taken. There was a discussion regarding vacating that alley. There was also discussion over the parking. It was suggested by Mr. Fowler that we simply let this go to Planning Commission pending your approval or disapproval tonight. But no one at that meeting indicated they had any problems or would have any problems, although we took no formal vote vacating that alley.
Okay.
Jim, my concern on behalf of the village with respect to the vacation of the alley is not whether it should be done. That's a planning issue, a decision for the village council. My concern is that it be done properly. That there's a procedure to be followed to do that. And then one thing that it may or may not affect what happens if it is vacated, the vacated alley falls 1/2 to either side of the adjoining property owner, to the adjoining properties. So there should not be an assumption that if the alley's vacated, it all goes to one particular parcel. It goes to, on each side, half to each abutting property. I don't know if that makes a difference, but I don't want that to get lost in the consideration.
I quite frankly don't know why that would even be a consideration. I mean, if property owner is getting an extra piece of, chunk of ground, I would suspect they'd be happy. If that's the way I understand what you're explaining, Mark.
Well, and again, I'm not making a value judgment about it. What I'm saying is that if to make the site plan work, if the alley's vacated, it has to go all to the property that's being developed. That legally is not what's going to happen. It's going to the vacated alley, 1/2 will go to the property that the alley runs east and west, does it not?
North
Do
and
I have the
south.
right?
North and
Pardon
south.
me?
North, yeah.
Okay, so then 1/2 of it's going to go to the property to the east, and 1/2 of it's going to go to the property to the west. That my only point is that to make sure everybody understands what is the effect of the vacation of the alley.
So, Christine, I have a question for you. Within 300 feet, letters went out to everybody in that area, right? To request their approval or disapproval or concerns with the proposed project.
No.
No?
This is not a rezoning or a special land use. This is just a site plan, which is not required under.
Okay, that's my mistake. Again, I need to get myself back up to speed after.
No problem.
I personally see this as an opportunity. We're going to increase the value of the property owners around. It's another step in the direction of improving that northeast quadrant, along with all the beautiful homes that are being built in that quadrant. Those people that are going to be occupying those new homes are going to be using that facility, in my opinion, my humble opinion. My personal look at the parking lot itself is it's mainly used by restaurant employees. That's not a dig against anybody. It's just my own personal view, and that's what I think. And the increased tax revenue for that particular piece. And I don't know if I can even ask this question. I'm assuming it's going to be a revenue generator that obviously in these times we need. And I guess that's all I really have to say about it. But I think it's an opportunity for the village to continue our continuous improvements going on over the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
this is Jay Foltz. So I don't really see that many issues going on with this building. I do like what they have proposed. My only issue that I'm seeing right now is that with the item numbers, like Mr. Fowler mentioned, I know that they're gonna revamp that area and make it look nice, but that's the dollars up front. So I'd like to see something change in that to where they do what they're saying they're doing up front, and then after X amount of years, they start paying rent on those lots, on those parking spaces. And that's all I have to say on that.
And Jay,
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Can I chime in? Jay, I agree with him.
Who are you first?
Tom Stevens, I'm sorry. I agree with him. But again, even with conditional provisions, my own personal experience is anybody can put a red tag on your building if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, so I think we can enforce those issues, and I would look to somebody in the audience that can tell me that those issues can't be enforced. I believe they can, and there's nothing worse than stopping a project because somebody's not doing what they're doing. Now, I'm not suggesting to override and be crazy about it, but at the same time, if you have conditions, they have to be met, and that's the agreement. I'd like to hear any other comment from the board members on that.
Mr. Stagner, can I speak to Tom?
Yes, hear me?
Go ahead,
Zach
Mr.
Fowler?
Fowler.
Hey, Tom, I'm in agreement with you, but I think that before we say anything, they should contact the property owners to the east and secure that property. I think Mr. Clark brought up a good point that their current site plan includes the full square footage of the vacated alley. If they have to split it with the property to the east, then that affects the
Well, Zach,
so they need to contact these people, whoever owns the property to the east, get their waiver. They don't want anything to do with it, and then everything's fine. But until that legal problem's taken care of, because they can actually sue. They can sue these people.
Well, and
they can
Zach,
sue us for making a decision.
Zach, that's why I asked the question, is because I was not aware that the provision of sending out the notices to people with a certain number of feet or whatever existed in that area. I know it does in certain areas, and I don't disagree with you that at all. I think that's probably a good move to make sure that everybody has a chance to chime in. And if they didn't receive letters, then obviously they don't know.
I agree with you. Yep, I agree.
I agree with you on that, Zach.
Dot the I's and cross the T's.
We're not rezoning.
Madam President, I have a question for you. It's just to be clear, did you suggest or say that the trustees would probably have no objection to,
When I posed that question for their input on those, there was no objections raised at the time, although we took no formal board action to make a motion and vote on that agenda item. But at the meeting, there was more concern and confusion over the parking lot because no one quite seemed to understand that we have the same exact issue in many other quadrants where businesses are operating using municipal spaces, especially here in the block where the village offices are, that have no parking associated with their particular business. It was just never enforced on the books. under Mr. Casson, he brought that forward that as an option in exchange for granting the site plan approval, we could make an allowance and then capture some additional revenue and maintenance to help assist the village with that parking lot. Right now, none of the other businesses who utilize the municipal lots pay anything for its upkeep and maintenance. So we are making that allowance in almost every instance of our central business district.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Chairman
Christine, can I
Stegner?
speak?
Go ahead.
I thought that they were only going to use half the alley. At least that's the way I read it. I think I'd want clarification from you that they were only going to utilize the 10-foot, recognizing that the other 10-foot would go to the adjoining property. We may want to get clarification from them on that.
Christine, can I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we're only using half of the alley. We're only vacating half of the alley. The property that is due east of that area that we want to vacate, we contacted that landowner already and tried to purchase that. He wouldn't sell it. So that was my original thought, was to purchase that property and put a parking lot there. But they would not sell it. I tried to call him. My realtor tried to call him. I even went around and had another family member try and call him. He's not selling. So when we started the building, vacation of the alley we didn't think was going to be a big issue, considering that the north alley is already vacated. And we're not vacating the entire alley. We're only vacating 10 feet of the 20. The other 10 feet goes to the property owner due east that we contact. So it's not as if we're trying to take the entire alley. I'd also like to note that the alley or road that is directly south, which would be due north of the parking lot. So if you look at the site plan that Christine has up, you can see where the Bailey Street parking lot is. You can see that road or alley that's there, and then the red box is the proposed development. We were under the impression that we were going to repave that street as well. I don't know if you guys have seen that street, but it's kind of in disrepair, and we were looking at repaving that entire street. So, you know, we're trying to improve as much of that area that's actually not even property owned by myself. I mean, that's owned by the village. In all reality, I don't even have to do anything to that. I really don't have to do anything to the existing parking that's there. I'm trying to come up with an equitable solution for the village and myself in order to, you know, make that area nicer and put a nice, you know, tax-bearing development in there. I agree with, I think it was Mr. Foltz, in regards to how the ongoing maintenance and, you know, beautification per se of that parking lot is going to play out. I'm suggesting that maybe Mr. Clark puts together a proposed maintenance agreement of what the Planning Commission thinks is fair for us to use that parking lot. And then from there, we can kind of go back and forth and agree on something. I don't want to go and propose something and then you guys look at it and say, you know, no, we're not interested in doing that. I'd rather have you guys propose it, and then if I can fit it in to our budget and make it work, then I'm all for it. I would rather maintain it and make sure that it's maintained for my tenants than have my tenants calling my office complaining all the time that there's, you know, the snow plow or the salt. I mean, you're going to have elderly people in and out of there with a medical building, and I want to make sure that, you know, it's salted and it's plowed. And I agree. If the curb gets damaged, I want to make sure that we can fix it right away. So this isn't something that, like, we're trying to just gain as much parking as possible. We're actually trying to work with you guys and put together an equitable solution for both parties.
Is that, Mr. Clark, is that something you'd be willing to do?
Well, sure. I absolutely would be willing to do that. I guess the question becomes, perhaps how does it fit? In other words, I can understand the developer. Well, what he's telling you is he doesn't want to bid against himself. He doesn't want to suggest something and the village say no, and then he's got to come up with something else and the village say no. Nobody wants to bid against themselves. Well, similarly, the village doesn't want to bid against itself either. I'll gladly put something together. You present it to the developer and he says, well, no, we're not willing to do that. Well, what have you done with the site plan? Have you approved it subject to the some type of maintenance agreement, or do you just approve it and hope that something gets put together? But absolutely, I'll do whatever I'm directed to do. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Grandstaff, I would like to make a motion that we deny this. It's too many what we can do and what we should do and what this just keeps getting deeper and deeper, and I am obviously from the start, I was opposed to it. So I make a motion that we deny.
Should we deny or table to go to DDA?
Well, if you guys look at the site plan,
Well,
we're within the ordinances of the village. I would just like to mention that. Right now, the way the site plan sits, we're within the ordinances set forth by the Village of Romeo. So I just want to make that very clear prior to this getting kicked down the road for months.
I'm going to say Mr. Grandstaff, I think we're close to a solution here. If Mr. Pamplona can be patient, I think we can satisfy everybody on this.
I agree, and I'm willing to work with you guys.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Jay Foltz here. Can instead of making the motion to deny, can we do a motion to, like Mr. Parker said, to put it down the proper channels? Can we go to the DDA and have them work with them and then bring it back to us? Give us a little more time on this.
I have
We
no
can
issue
do
with
whatever
that.
you
guys want to do.
We can do whatever you guys want to do. I mean, I don't know that we have to go to the DDA.
Well, I'm not sure what he was speaking about exactly about how the building and all that. What was that? But either way, if we could table
it's up to
it.
us to decide if we're in compliance, and so my thoughts are, why don't we table this and solve a couple of these problems, like vacating, getting something from the council that is solid, not how they feel, but something that they voted on, and move on from there. I sort of, if we if we go down the line and Pamplona is forced to pay for use of the parking lot, we have another problem, which is other people are not, and they're using the parking lot. All the bars use the municipal parking lots. That I think that might create another problem for us. I'm not sure. That's probably something Mr. Clark could advise us on, or Mr. Casson. But I mean, I would rather work with them than kick them out at this point. So
I agree.
I'm going to make a motion that we.
Well, you currently have a motion by Mr. Grandstaff, so he has to retract his
Do we have a
motion.
second, Mr. Grandstaff? You want to withdraw that motion or wait for a second?
No.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second his motion.
Okay, roll call vote.
Okay, roll call. This motion is to deny. How do we read this out?
Deny as
Grandstaff?
presented? Is that how you want it, Bill?
Yeah, deny the,
as presented?
yep.
Okay, and support by Fowler. Okay, roll call. Hall.
Lisa Hall. What happened? She's still with us? Yes.
She is.
Oh.
She hasn't unmuted herself yet.
Yeah, there she,
There she is.
Okay, I do not agree with the denial.
Stagner,
I'm opposed to denial.
Stevens,
He's muted.
Opposed to denial.
Miles,
Opposed to the denial.
Davis.
Opposed to denial.
Is Webb, he joined us in yet?
No, he hasn't chimed in yet.
Okay, and Foltz is a no. So, it's a no.
Okay, still got to take Fowler and Grandstaff
Yeah,
vote.
yeah.
Okay,
Stevens.
Fowler.
I'm opposed to
Stevens
it.
already got.
I'm opposed to it.
Second.
You're opposed to it?
Yeah.
You're with your motion.
I know. I
got
agreed the motion to come to the vote.
Grandstaff?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, how many opposed and how many in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 opposed and 2 in favor of the motion by Grandstaff.
I'd like to make a motion on top of that one.
You being who?
I'm sorry, Zach Fowler. I'd like to make a motion that we table this and it go to Mr. Clark and their attorney to work out the verbiage, come back to the planning commission.
Okay,
I gotta answer. My door. Whose door? Did you get that, Jim? Or Jeff?
Mr.
I think
Fowler,
that-
would you add to your motion that the council also make a decision on vacating the alley?
All right. It's going to be hard to repeat those words.
Okay, so you started off with you asked for a motion to table and go to Mr. Clark and work out details.
Yes. And also have Mr. Clark review the information regarding vacating the alley with council. And council can make a recommendation on that. And to also,
That's a lot of writing. but
I
hang
know,
on.
man, you're good at it. And also put the invitation out to the DDA
Okay,
to
hang
attend
on
our
a
next
minute.
meeting.
Yes. Okay, that needs to be in the motion.
Ah, that sounds good. And we can share the information with the DDA. And Mr. Jim and Bill our chair and our vice chair can.
I cut you off at the the motion I have here now is table to go to Mr. Clark and work out details, and also have Mr. Clark work out with the council on vacating the alley.
Yes, for verbiage.
Okay. Anybody second that? I'll second that. I'll support that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
Can I add something to that?
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no, I would like Mr. Clark to also add in there the maintenance agreement. So that's also a part of it, so everybody can see that language as well.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be sent to a different board like the DDA, I'd like all of it to go there at once so that we don't have to come back again if there is an issue with the maintenance agreement.
Mr. Fowler, would you like to add that?
Yes, that was one of the points that was covered.
Okay. Okay. I still support Jay Foltz. Okay, we're going to do a roll call. Stagner,
I'm in favor, yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Stevens. Unmute yourself.
Yes.
Smiles.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Grandstaff.
No.
Foltz is a yes. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yes, 1 no.
Motion passes then. Okay. There's Mr. Pampalone. Okay, that's where we stand. I guess we're going to revisit this.
Does Mr. Clark has my contact information?
I do not.
Okay.
I'm sure it can be provided.
Okay, I'd love direct contact with you so that we can work together on these, if that's okay with the board.
Shit.
Well, the village is my client, so with whom I have contact and what I do is up to the village. I follow the village's direction. The village is my client.
What about if I am in direct contact with Christine, and then you and Christine can work together?
Whatever Miss Malzahn is comfortable with, so am I. My only point is I just can't go rogue as the lawyer and negotiate and do things because it seems like fun at the time. I have to follow the direction of my client.
If I could just interject and offer, we do have a village council meeting scheduled on the 20th. Our council packets go out. Our inclusions must be received by the 15th. So if there's just a brief window that if the three of us could sit down and meet, I'm happy to facilitate that. And if we could work it out, we could still get it in front of village council to act on or at least review for this month to hopefully expedite your process. So, Vito, you have my contact information, and you can reach out to me tomorrow.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm at your disposal. So you just we'll figure it out.
Okay.
And I have time between now and Wednesday. And the other thing, as part of trying to keep this in forward motion, I think if appropriate, the council could consider the resolution to vacate the alley at the July meeting, set a public hearing 30 days after, and so that would keep that part of the matter moving forward.
Yes, cool.
Good idea.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to new business item number 2. Our our commission meeting calendar of dates for 2020, 2021. Has everybody looked at it?
Yes.
Anybody need any changes to this?
Make a motion to accept.
Well, this is Kim Davis. I did notice the January date was on a Saturday. So I don't know if that's been changed. Let me just look. I did let Cindy know, and she sent out an email with an update. So this, yeah, it is correct, actually. So January 7th was corrected. This is the most recent version. Looks good.
Okay. Support.
Corrected one. I'll second it. That's Stegner.
Yes, sir. Okay, roll call. Smiles.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Grandstaff.
Yes.
Stevens.
He's probably muted.
Yes.
Stagner.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
And Foltz is a yes as well. That's 8 yeses, 0 no's.
Okay, moving on to item number 3, master plan update from Mr. Casson.
Yeah, we're at the point where I need council, DDA, and most importantly, the planning commission's input on how we would like to proceed on a number of issues. A few of which came out tonight, being parking and also the issue of ground floor retail versus ground floor medical, Main Street, CBD, and all those things. So I'm requesting from you that we schedule a workshop with 3 groups so we can proceed and get this thing wrapped up.
Sounds good to me. All we have to do is set a date then. I don't know, what do we want to set a date now? How soon do you want to meet, Mr. Casson?
We need to probably post it it's not going to be a public hearing, but we need to post it, or should. So probably within, right now, first part of August, I think would be ideal if we can do that. As long as the governor doesn't come down with some new mandates on social distancing or groups. But as of now, it really needs an in-person meeting. It's just too difficult to do something like that online like this.
I wonder if there's a spot outside we can meet. Okay, let me look at my calendar.
We could possibly use I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
We could possibly use the Lions Club, because that does have an overhang down there. And
Good call.
That'd be a great idea. That would work.
okay. Let's just pick a couple. Can we get back on dates? Can we talk about it in the next couple of days? And I can get a couple of dates, make sure see what's available to begin in August.
Sure. Absolutely. Appreciate it.
You also, it's Mark Clark, I'll just mention, you have to, under the Open Meetings Act, I agree with Mr. Casson, it should be posted, but you also have, I don't think it'll be a problem, but I just alert you that you're not typically or usually supposed to meet on private property for public meetings. I'm not saying you cannot do that, and I would recommend that you keep the Lions Club as a viable alternative. We'll just have to make sure that everything is done appropriately to permit that.
Okay, well, you guys get back to me if that's feasible or not.
One more thing.
And I think it will be, but I just didn't want somebody to be surprised later on.
If I may, maybe once we get that meeting set, maybe a week before the meeting, I'll send each of you a draft of the master plan, or at least the goals and objective portion, some of the other things, so that you can read and provide your input that night, if you could, wouldn't mind.
Have you thought Jim Stegner, of course, Mr. Casson, have you thought any more, just as an aside, about form zoning?
Form-based codes is being recommended for the downtown CBD area, definitely.
Awesome. Okay. All right, let's move on to, well, actually, I want to suggest people think about August 6th or the 13th. I'm just throwing that out there to get the ball rolling. So 6th or 13th of August. Item number 4, medical and recreational marijuana ordinance review and recommendations, proposed amendments to the Village of Romeo zoning code. Opinions? Anyone?
Yes, Mr. Stegner, I've just got a couple of questions, and maybe Christine can clarify these for me. In the medical marijuana, there's page numbers on here, so I'm just going to go by section. It'll be section 8. Section 8D, number 8.
I'm sorry, did you say the medical or the recreational?
This is medical.
Okay.
I think they both read, some of these things read pretty close to being the same.
Yes.
You say section 8, number 8?
No, section 8D, number 8. So it's 8D8 is what it is.
Okay.
It says a copy of the special use permit issued by the Village of Romeo Planning Commission. So are you gonna create an actual permit for the Planning Commission to issue, or are you gonna use the minutes, or is there gonna be some type of something that you're gonna have from the Planning Commission? So is the minutes gonna work, or how is that gonna work?
No, this item would come before you as a special land use permit approval.
Okay.
As part of the licensing process.
Okay.
That is my intention.
Okay. All right. Let me see here. And then section 10. Section 10D. Should D, just in reading through this, it seems to me like D should go back into section 9 because it refers back to applicants, not licensees.
Licenses.
License
Okay.
application.
The wording should probably just be changed to licensees cannot transfer instead of applicants.
Okay, okay, all right. Then a couple more things I just have to locate them. Under section 11, and this is the grower facility, and I think it applies to both. I don't see anything anywhere, and I've seen it in other ordinances in other communities. I don't see anything anywhere that says that it needs to meet the fire codes. So that somewhere, fire department needs to be, looking at this and making sure that it meets the fire codes.
It's my understanding that that's on the special land use permit for approval by several entities for that purpose.
Okay, all right. And then the only other thing that I really had was a growing facility. And I've came across this many times, and I've been to many different, things related to medical marijuana, to discussions and so on and so forth before the laws actually were passed. In a growing facility, there is an odor that is produced. And I know that in the ordinance there is a provision for a nuisance ordinance that relates to odor and not leaving the perimeter of the actual site that it's on. I don't see anything in here requiring a growing facility to put some type of filters or scrubbers or something in air filtration systems to prevent the smell from going outside of their property lines.
I believe that is indeed in there.
Okay.
But off the top of my head, I will look for it while you continue your discussion and see if I can track it down, unless somebody finds it first. But
and then the only other thing that I had was, again, number 10. B seems, I understand what it's saying, but it's very, I don't want to say that it's not worded incorrectly. It just seems rather in the way that it reads.
Section 10, where?
Section 10B.
B.
Yeah. I understand what it's saying, and I'm sure all of us will understand what it's just kind of confusing the way that it's written.
okay. Well, I should note that I actually met with Mayor Tom Dion from Utica, and he shared with me their process. They recently approved and granted licenses to 2 dispensaries and 1 grow facility in their community. He shared with me that their score sheet. He also shared with me their ordinances, which I forwarded on to legal. Mr. Clark had a chance to review it, and him and I had a conversation prior to the beginning of this meeting, and we agreed that the way that their ordinance functions is much easier to implement. Having it one ordinance for both medical and recreation, and it just sort of cleaned it up. And if you wanted to ask him any of his input questions, I'm sure he could attest to that. But our plan was to sort of pare the content of what you have before you tonight down into one more easier to implement and read document.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll note your section. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any comment? Hey, Mike.
I have, Zach Fowler. I have a question. On section 8, just going through this thing, B, where it says no elected official person who is employed by the village. And to go to D in section 8, where it says every applicant for a municipal license to operate a marijuana establishment shall file an application in the village president's office. Not to put a whole lot of onuses on our president, but just to keep that arm's length away, I guess this question is to Mr. Clark. Did this like read a little different than the way it's reading? Or is this permissible?
Is he muted?
He is muted. Yep.
Oh, yes? Oh. Well, it's just to...
There you go. You were muted.
I don't know how I became muted. I think somebody else did that.
Or
other people, I think Bill Parker muted me. Are other people, just because I said something about that?
You can't trust Parker.
I heard Mr. Fowler's question. It's really a location. The application will be filed in the village president's office. It's not with the person or the individual. So the applicant would, under this proposal or this proposed ordinance, the applicant would come with the application and say, "Here, I'm filing this in the office of the village president." Should that be stated differently? Perhaps, but again, it's a location. It's not a substantive thing. And to Ms. Malzahn's point, the ordinance from Utica that she and I reviewed, it addresses that in terms of where filed, how filed, and who does what with it, the application. So that I think if you consider the ordinance, or at least something in the nature of the ordinance that Utica has, that will be addressed, and that won't be a concern.
Okay, thank you. And one last question, Zach Fowler. Christine, you mentioned at our council meeting that it stated that there was not going to be any facility east of the bypass or west of the bypass, and I looked for that all over this place, and I couldn't find it.
Look in the third document, which is your proposed zoning amendments. It's included in that. Because that's where the zoning would take place.
Okay, so it actually says there will not be any marijuana facility located west of M53 bypass.
It says, if you look at that proposed amendment document, we're going to add to section 46393, item under 9, item A, the location of any facility is restricted to the industrial zone district located north of 32 Mile Road and east of M53.
Okay. Can you just put M53 bypass in there? Just in case somebody gets real technical of Old Van Dyke.
I will certainly make that notation.
Thanks.
And one of the things, as you consider this, it's Mark Clark, one of the things I would recommend that you consider in referring specifically to that proposed amendment to section 46-393, section 9, where it says marijuana growers, processors, secure transporters, and safety compliance and testing facilities. If those uses or activities are all that you intend and want to allow, then other references to marijuana micro businesses, retailers, provisioning centers, if you're not going to permit those anywhere, whether it's in the industrial area or someplace else in the village, if you're not going to permit those anywhere, then I would recommend that you specifically so state. And there's an example, if you look at the recreational marijuana proposed ordinance, or the draft that I believe you have before you, under section 2, legislative intent, in that first paragraph, at the end of that first paragraph, it says not permitted under this ordinance shall include marijuana micro businesses, marijuana retailers, or any other type of recreational marijuana related business. I would recommend, again, if you're going to limit it to growers, processors, transporters, and I'm not suggesting you should do that or you shouldn't do that. All I'm saying is that whatever your limitation is, if there is any, should be stated specifically, whether it's in the recreational ordinance or the medical marijuana ordinance, or whether it's in a combined ordinance. You want to make sure that what you want to allow is all that you want to allow.
Any other comments or criticisms or additions?
Mr. Stegner?
Go ahead.
Just to let everybody go on the record, this will allow basically all medical and recreational uses, with the exception of retailers, provisioning centers, or dispensaries. So you're allowing everything but that, which is what a lot of communities have been doing. The stigma is actually the dispensaries, and Romeo is not going to be allowing that as of this time.
All right, well, let's recommend that this move forward, and there's going to be a reduced or truncated version of this, which includes everything that we have before us here tonight. We want to see a copy of that as soon as possible. So would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
Say that one more time.
Okay, well, let's recommend to council that they move forward with this as it is, but we need to see copies of the shortened version, which I understand includes everything that's here. It's just written differently and it's more concise. That makes sense?
I think I got it.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to accept so let me think about this for a minute. So we want to put this in front of the council.
with notations that have been made tonight.
Okay, hang on a second. To send to council with notations made tonight. Okay, to send to council with notations made tonight.
And then return to the commission the revised copy that we're going to need to see, so we can both move forward with this. We are going to see a revised copy, right? Ms. Malzahn?
Yes, Chairman Stanger, Mr. Clark and I will expedite rewriting and drafting it so that we can get a copy posted to our website for the public hearing that has been scheduled for our village council meeting on the 20th. You have also a public hearing scheduled for your next meeting in August to talk about the zoning amendments, but you will have a copy at that meeting as well. So you will have all two pieces, excuse me, a joint ordinance, no pun intended, and
I don't know what you mean.
Good one, Chris.
right, yes, and the zoning amendments.
Okay, so let me reread this motion here one time clear. The motion is to send to council with notations made tonight and then return to the planning commission with revised literature.
Yeah, that's close enough, I would say.
Hey,
Okay,
hey, folks.
Yes, sir.
You might want to put the date when you say tonight down.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
You're looking for a second?
I'll second that motion. Chris Smiles?
Hello, Chris.
Okay, roll call vote.
Okay, Davis,
Yes.
Smiles,
Yes.
Fowler,
No.
Grandstaff,
Yes.
Stagner,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Foltz is a yes. 7 yes, 1 no.
Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn?
Anybody? Second, I'll second.
All right, there we go. You got to do roll call?
Roll call.
Stagner,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Grandstaff,
Oh, yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Smiles,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Foltz is a yes, and give me, who made the motion there?
Fowler.
And support was?
Stevens, I think.
Well, I'm asking. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yes.
Was there a doubt?
No, sir. No,
Have a
sir.
good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, thank you.
Good night.
Turn this
Thanks.
Good night.
Pass on Mr. Clark.